Lord, thank you for your love for us, for calling us your children, for saving us, that we could be in your family, and that here on this earth we can be your family together. And as part of that worldwide historic family, we are the West Valley Church family. And you are so active and involved in our church through the lives of every single person, from the littlest to the oldest. You are active in our church and in our relationships and in our ministries. And because of that, Lord, here we are for these moments together to talk about some exciting stuff. So we invite you, God, not that you need us to, but we invite your Holy Spirit to unite our hearts around you and your purposes and our love for one another. As we talk about these exciting things, we pray it in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Well, I think what I'd like to do is try to give you a real quick recap on the history of where we've been, and then give you the latest updates on what's going on, and then tell you, because you're going to have an opportunity to vote this today after church and next Sunday, so we'll tell you what that vote is about, okay? Before I do that, though, I want to introduce Tom Frula. He is one of the co-chairs of the Renovation team. Tom has, when we started out, we're putting this team together. I mentioned this just recently to somebody. God really knew what he was doing, because we ended up with two chair people, two folks leading the renovation team. Tom has led the planning up to this point and leads the meetings. Stephen Stilley, who is on vacation with his family, I think. I know he's out of town. I think it's vacation. But Stephen is the other chair, and this is where Stephen's part starts picking up. He's going to be the person who is the liaison between the architect and the contractor and the team. So he's going to be kind of the busy guy from this stage forward, but Tom will continue to lead the process. Does that make sense? And God was just genius in putting that together, because they are amazing leaders and they're doing a great job. So, Tom, do you want to introduce any of the team that's here?
Well, Alex, Bruce, John, Adam, Jeff, Darcy. Who am I missing?
Missing anybody?
I don't think so.
Besides Stephen?
And then obviously Stephen, who's out of town.
So those are, some of those folks are on your leadership team and some are not. Most have a history of commitment to this church and experience in all of the things that we're talking about. Alex is here. He continues to be the chair of Here for Good. And Jim Cunningham is here. Is there anybody else on the executive team that I'm missing?
Lowell.
Yeah, Melissa, Lowell. Anyway, we got a lot of people involved in this process. So let me real quick kind of remind you of where this team has gone. Right after we were able to pay off the mortgage, the leadership team began the process of interviewing architects. We did not want to move ahead of where the church was and where the giving has been, so we've tried to stay in step with that and not charge out ahead. So as soon as the mortgage was paid off, that process began. Took a few months, but they ended up hiring, it's called BPH Architects. They are from the west side, but they almost, 80-90% of their work is with churches all around the Northwest. And Christian architects, godly people, they've just been amazing to work with. So once we identified that, the leadership team, I think there were 3 or 4 or more than that we researched. I don't remember, Adam, but there was a lot. once they landed on BPH, we met with Bart, who's the principal architect for us, and began the process of gathering intel, if you will. We surveyed all of the ministry leaders in all the areas of the church, because part of what we're trying to do is not just a specific project, but we're trying to think about long-range master planning as well, right? So that took a few months. We sent out surveys and had conversations and collected pages and pages of information from our volunteer ministry leaders and pastors throughout the church. Began sifting through that to begin to try to identify the priority areas that we wanted to focus on. And then continued to work with the architect and trying to gauge how much we can do based on how much giving we anticipate comes in still for Here for Good, which has been the key thing, because remember, we are not going to go into debt. So trying to gauge, if we focus on this, is it going to cost too much that we can't do this? So that has been probably the biggest bulk of our time, don't you think?
Right.
A lot of conversations back and forth, trying to prioritize, trying to nail it down. Until, am I missing anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. Whew, I just flew through a lot of time. Until we finally were able to begin to identify key priority areas, and I think you've heard us talk about those. The leadership team directed the renovation team to say, we really think you need to focus on 3 key areas: the foyer restrooms, the children's area, and the worship center. And that, believe it or not, took a long time to figure out. Because like I said, we focus too much on this, we don't have resources to do this. And so what can we do the most with what we anticipate we'll be able to have? And so as we began to kind of really focus on that, there were several conversations, right, Jeff, with Bart. We've gone back and forth, and how about this? And then, no, we don't need anything that fancy. I think we had a Taj Mahal of bathrooms when we first started. It was something. But continued to narrow that down until, and this is what you'll be voting on, and I'll explain that more a little bit later, but until the board said, okay, here's the plan. Let's try to do as much as we can for as little expense as we can on the restrooms and consolidation of the children's area. And I'll explain that here in a minute. And then with whatever we have left, which is as much as we hope to be able to have, we'll look at the worship center. Because the worship center, the whole goal of Here for Good at 1.6 isn't enough to do what needs to be done in the worship center. So that's going to take some prioritizing. And just last month, the board started the conversation on, okay, what are the key things in the worship center, and what do we need to focus on in order to make the best use of the funds we anticipate are coming in. Okay? Is that? Your leadership team is extremely conscious that they need to do as much as possible within the resources we have. Borrowing money is not going to happen. And that's tough, right? Because the economy keeps changing, the cost of materials keep changing. So at any rate, we are at the point now where the team has compiled a list of contractors and are going to begin conversation with them, and maybe I'll let you explain that process, Tom, so that we can identify a contractor to begin working with us. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, we just on the renovation team identified a list of contractors, and then different ones of us who knew contact people in those organizations contacted them, some of whom were not interested, not philosophically, but their workload and everything, they just couldn't put it on their plate. So we have a list of 6 contractors who are interested.
Local.
As long as you include Sunnyside as being local, that we are going to send out requests for proposals, assuming the vote passes. So nothing's going to happen until that vote is tallied after next Sunday. But then the process is to get a general contractor hired before we have working drawings. The idea being that the general contractor and the architect and the church become a team, so that the general contractor is deeply involved in the details, not the prioritization, but the details. Okay, this is what we want to build. Well, who better knows how to do that, even better than the architect, is the general contractor who's going to do it. So we'll take that 6, send out those requests for proposals, look at what we get back, and then choose probably 3 to actually face-to-face interview. Have them come here, they can have a better view of the facilities, and we will then pick one who will become a team member. Hopefully it works well enough that that same general continues through our phases as we have money to work with. We really don't want to hire somebody to do the restrooms, somebody else to do the children's consolidation, and somebody else to work in the worship center. We really want to build a team that moves forward through the whole process, working together.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Tom. I would just clarify when he said we'll pick one. The renovation team will present 2 or 3 to the leadership team.
Right.
And the leadership team will make that decision. The renovation team doesn't have that authority. And then once we have that contractor, then we'll be able to get some more accurate numbers of cost projections. And then we'll be able to really begin to focus on the worship center. Right now, we can't, because we really don't have a clear idea of what we're going to have, right? So once we have that contractor, they'll be able to start charting out costs of materials and labor and subcontractors and permitting and all that kind of stuff, so that we'll have a much better idea of here's how much we have left for the worship center. Now, what are the biggest things that we can do with those resources?
Can I add one thing? My dilemma, it's not really a dilemma, but my situation is I'm both on the leadership, on the leadership team and the renovation team. So when I say we, it kind of gets convoluted, but you need to understand that the renovation team does not make decisions. Mm-hmm. They make recommendations or just presenting information, and it is the leadership team that makes all of the actual decisions, including some things that the membership decides.
Yeah. So that's a good point too, because they only do what the leadership team has authorized them to do, which is mostly the research and the hard work, but all the decisions, especially when it comes to money, all of that is determined by the leadership team. Okay. So we want to show you what we've got so far, but before I do you have any questions about the process up to this point? Oops, my computer went to sleep.
What's the thought process on who's going to be the point person working with the contractor? The reason I ask that question is the contractor's going to come in and work. You have project managers. They oversee all the funds, all the projects and everything. In the drawings when they're produced, there's going to be spec sheets, there's going to be cut sheets, there's going to be a lot of information in there.
Yeah.
And not to bore you, but I've been project manager on some
Sure.
huge contracts.
Yeah.
And there's places in there that you have a bid, you have work that's going on, and somebody misses something, they come back and they look and say, we got a change order in here. But in fact, it is not a change order. Somebody's made a mistake, and they're after more money to cover their mistake.
Yeah.
Who in the church
Yeah.
is going to monitor that?
Yeah.
Who is the person that has the qualifications, the credentials, and the ability to do that? Has the team considered those things?
Yes, that's what Stephen does
Okay.
at his work, and so he's got experience with that. And because it's a team approach, Bart, our architect, will have
Okay.
hands-on involvement in all of that too, which is the value of that team approach. Good question.
Once you start the renovation in the building, can the city step in and require further work to update any recommendations that they now require?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, for instance, the restrooms are not ADA compliant, so as soon as we begin work, they would have to be. When the time comes, depending on what we're doing in the worship center, the ADA is that any place you can go on two legs, anybody else who doesn't have two legs has to be able to get to. So if we do anything on the stage configuration, we have to have a way for folks who can't walk to be able to get there. So those are things that we don't have to because it's a 50-year-old room, but we will, depending on what it is that we do. But nothing that, I don't think we anticipate anything that's going to be terribly out of question. In fact, Bart has said that Yakima is much easier to work with than Seattle.
Well, Pastor Mike, isn't it such that we don't break ground on anything until the city has approved permitting?
Correct.
Right.
And that permitting is going to give whatever input, oh, you need to change this or add this. At that
Correct.
point. We don't get started in a project and then them say, oh yeah, now you got to do this or that. That's true. Like
Right.
the thing when Walmart went in, there were some things that really opened our eyes for
Yeah.
a while back.
Yeah.
Everything has to be submitted, they look it over, and they'll make recommendations
Yeah.
based on current codes and stuff that this be taken care of, and then
Right.
plans will be approved and
Yeah.
permit given.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Bob. Yeah. There shouldn't be surprises.
So just kind of making sure everyone understands. So we're going to go through this RFP proposal to get an idea of who you get down to your three. What's the accountability, because they've got to this RFP, they've kind of given you an idea, and it sounds like then it becomes a formed team that then will give you another idea. How well are you going to hold these people you've now selected or unselected if the RFP, gets thrown out?
I'm
I guess-
thrown out by whom?
You've deselected people,
Right?
and you haven't finished anything for an RFP because you're going to bring them all in to then finish it. So I was trying to figure out how then, if all of a sudden the price explodes or changes significantly, you've actually disselected people that may be completely different. So I was trying to figure out how you tie those two in so there's accountability if someone gives you a really low RFP to get in the door and then
Oh, I see.
prices jack way up.
Okay, let
question.
me clarify. The primary objective of the RFP process isn't money. It's to pick a person that we think we want to work with, the same way with the architect. Money wasn't involved in the selection of the architect. Is what kind of projects have you worked on? How comfortable are you working with a committee structure instead of an owner that says, do this? So it's really more of a process to get to know the architects and then pick one based on building a relationship as opposed to them submitting a number. We're not going to ask them to submit a number.
I would also add, and that's a really good question, thanks for asking that. The 6 or so that we have all have very strong reputations in the community. So we've vetted those 6 already. So we're hopeful we're not going to be surprised.
Well, and just to reiterate, the idea of getting a contractor on board was our architects, he said that's our next step. We can't really go any further because we need somebody that can say, we may think, yeah, we're gonna do this first and we're gonna do that. And a builder has a process that would say, no, it's gonna cost you less to go this way instead of
Right.
this way. I mean, it's that kind of stuff.
Yes.
It was Bart's recommendation.
Right.
Yeah.
That our next step was to get a contractor.
Good, thanks, Jeff.
So are we going to use a cost-plus contract or a fixed-price contract?
I don't know what that means.
Don't know yet. Probably, as it's written up in the RFP, probably a cost plus with significant level of accountability in seeing the costs. But that's part of what the RFP stipulates is their willingness to be open and transparent with their books on this project.
I'm glad he had the answer for you. Sorry about last week, Don. The donut comment.
I would have laughed.
Okay. These are really, really good questions, but I'm mindful of the time, and I want to get some pictures in front of you because that may generate some more questions, okay? So keep in mind what we're showing you. These are not detailed drawings of, that we can hand to a contractor and begin working with. These are just concepts, pretty detailed concepts that the renovation team has worked with Bart on in multiple iterations to try to maximize what we can do for as little cost as possible. So let's start with the restrooms, maybe. If I could, come on.
Slide comes next. We'll start with it.
Come on.
That's the way it works.
Well, what's going on here?
There we go.
There, whoop, it went too fast. I don't know why it's going backwards. There we go. Okay. So let me get your bearings. This is right about here is the original entrance to the men's room. This is the closet, that closet with the little sink and stuff. And around here is the original entrance to the women's room.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? Okay.
So we're in the foyer.
So yes, this is the foyer. This is the welcome center straight across. You got your bearings there?
Yeah.
So a key part of the conversation was we need what we call a family restroom, a place where somebody who's a caregiver can take the person they're caring for and go into the restroom with them, shut the door behind them, and not interfere. And often that person is the opposite sex. So we needed a family restroom. So that's the idea behind it. So essentially we would take out, this is the entrance now to the men's room. There's a little vestibule sort of thing. So this is open, but there's a door here. So you're not looking straight into the guys. This is a water heater. So the men's room, you'd come in, there's sinks, shelves, there's the urinals, and 2 stalls, one of which is ADA compliant. Now here's the family restroom. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. This here is, again, just to help with the visual, because you don't want somebody standing out here and the door opens and they're looking straight in at the toilet.
Yeah.
So the ladies, one of the things that Bart said was, I can't believe your ladies have to walk past all the toilets to wash their hands and then walk back out past all the toilets to leave. He said, I've never heard of that. Don't understand that at all. So,
But we did.
yeah, you did. You continue to do it, and you're such good troopers about it. So, to give you another little frame of reference here, if you don't know, there's a hallway here that goes into the administration. We call it the Hall of Dead Pastors because it has all our pictures on it. So that hallway becomes an entrance into a vestibule area for the ladies. there's a kind of a freestanding island of sinks, and then you can go around either side for the stalls, and this is a baby changing area. This end of the hall would become, on the admin side, would become a closet for now. This gives us flexibility for this space, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. You have questions about that?
Is there like handouts to share for folks that aren't here?
We're recording it, so it is going to be available on video. But I'm sorry, we didn't think about that. There's no reason we can't. But keep in mind, when we talk about voting, we're not going to ask you to vote on where the sinks should be or where the toilets should be or whether you like this floor plan or not. Okay? We don't need a 350-person committee. Okay? So I'll explain more about the voting in a minute. But anyway, does that make sense? You will not believe how much work the team went through to get to that.
Wow, it's beautiful.
The nice thing about work on that is it's not going to disrupt worship, other than you got to walk further to use the restroom for a few months, 2-3 months. Ready to move on? Yes. Okay. The next area, maybe you want to talk about this, Tom, the consolidation of the children's area, why that was so important.
Well, if many of us are old enough to remember that we didn't check in and check out our children, anybody could pick up anybody. And Lowell and I are laughing because our kids some of them were about the same age, and none of that mattered. The security wasn't in our conversations at the time that this building was built. So it wasn't really given a lot of consideration about the division between the two. So there's improved security and improved convenience, because right now if you have a wee one and a grade schooler, you're taking your kids to two different places. So when we say consolidation of the children, that means no more nursery and toddlers at that end of the building. All of the children up through grade school, well, the youth is down here too, but all of the children up through grade school will be in this area that now is grade school part of the building. So that the check-in area will be one area, and it's much more easy to secure with doors and locks and things. So when we use the word consolidate, the two criteria was convenience and security.
So getting back to this, that's why if we move the nursery, this becomes an adult classroom space. So eventually what that could mean is we could punch a door through here to have access to the classroom from the admin area, and without too much cost. I mean, that's something our people can do without having to pay somebody, huge money to do that. So that's why this is here. You know how to do that. You've done that for us a few times.
And we're not including anything in that classroom in the architect's work. There's no point in paying an architect to tell us that we need to paint the room.
Yeah.
We pretty much know that how to convert it from a toddler area to a more useful area.
So again, these are not stamped in stone. This is just the general ideas, and as we drill down and work with a contractor, this may change, especially if we can do it for less. But the concept is still the same as far as the family room, restroom, and the configurations.
Is that the plan for the baby nursery and the crib area too?
Yes. So that space where the other nursery is and the baby jail with the cribs, that there's a lot of things that could become. It could become the streaming studio, which is now back behind the platform. It could become part of a large sound light area. There's a lot that can happen in that space. So we're kind of waiting on the worship center to figure that out. The very least is it would become another classroom. I should add, too, part of that conversation is that we would hope to enclose the overflow so that it's its own space for larger classrooms. Still keep the dividers, but enclose it from the worship center and soundproof it. So we could use it on Sunday mornings, for one thing, and just have like a chapel, which we've used it for a couple of times for funerals, or classrooms or whatever. So again, that's something that as we work in the worship center, if we decide we can do that, that's probably something we could do with our own people and not have to pay huge amounts of money to do. Because it's just putting in walls. So, yeah. So, all right, let me help you get your bearings here, because this looks a lot different. Let's see, this is the NNU wall, right here. This is currently where there's a kind of an arched counter across there. It's where you check in your kids. There's a little slide here, right? Right now there's 2 double doors for the upward hallway, right? 2 double doors. We don't know why there necessarily needs to be 2, other than I think they were thinking years ago down the road there would be a large sanctuary out the back of the building. But for fire purposes, we only need 1 set of double doors. So the thought is this: there would be permanent, I think permanent. We haven't really decided, but at least areas here that are cabinet islands to kind of make this psychological barricade that this is where the children's area starts. There would be counters here so parents could check in their kids. Multiple kiosks or computer stations to be able to do that. We can't do anything with this. This is Larry's space, which has all the electrical and the fire and everything kind of converges in that room. So we can't do anything with that. But these areas, and we've been talking a lot with Pastor Casey about that, these areas currently that are over here by the slide check-in spot, there's a couple of rooms that aren't even being used all that much. So that's where the nurseries would go, is the thinking. Okay? There would be a set of double doors here for security. So when kids check in, they're in and they're contained. So for instance, there's restrooms in the hallway here and here. For our kids, for security, if they have to go to the restroom, an adult has to accompany them out of their classroom into the restroom. If this is secure, it would be secure at the north door, so this wouldn't be an entrance anymore. I shouldn't say that. When it's children's space, that would be locked. And the same thing with double doors on this end. And then this room, when it's children's space, this could be a multi-use room, but this could be dedicated children's space when it's secured. Which is, again, why the overflow could be used, because it's almost the exact same size. Doesn't mean this couldn't be used for adult space, because we can just open the doors and we can use this when it doesn't have to be secured for children. But any space we lose over there, the children could use over here for caravans or for Sunday children's church. Does that make sense? That's the thinking. So the other thought was that we could move a nursing room, cry room kind of a thing over here. If you Half of you haven't been in there, but the women's restroom right now has a shower and sort of this weird, I think it was originally supposed to be like a bride's room, but it's just sort of a locker room with benches. And so we could make that space much nicer. It could be a nice bride's room, but also a nursing cry room. And all of that would be in the same space. Eliminating this door would help us with visual barrier here, and then create more storage, which you can't ever have enough of. So that was the thinking. Again, this is not stamped in stone, but that's where the conversation has gone.
Oh, I was just wondering if there was any thought of having another family bathroom near the children's area, because that's the other opportunity where you have a parent with 2 sets of young kids. You can't. What do you do with a 6-year-old boy and a girl?
And that's a very good question. We hadn't thought about a family restroom, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, it's a very good question. I think we'll probably talk that through.
I was just looking at that, thinking, long range things. We have upward soccer.
Uh-huh.
That gets used a lot for people coming in and out of there using restrooms and whatnot. Has that been thought about too?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because when we do upward soccer, these are locked.
Right.
So they don't go beyond the hallway. So this also would be locked. So all they'd have access to is the restroom.
Okay.
Same with the men's room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guys, just
Yep. Yeah, 100%. Yep. And so again, these aren't hard and fast. This is just kind of after multiple conversations and trying to figure it out, this is where we've come to at this point.
I would add, Pastor talked about the lock security for the grade schoolers that go down the hall. But down here in the bottom of the green is the only entrance into the nursery and toddlers area, so that is also locked and secure.
Might be a half door kind of Dutch door, yeah.
But yeah, so that. But all the check-in in one area, and then 2 secure directions depending on the age of the child.
Yeah, Harold?
You mentioned a family restroom.
Mm-hmm.
The thought comes to me that if a person is in a wheelchair or needs assistance, it certainly would be nice if we had some automatic doors
Yeah.
in the front. Can that be included at the time of that?
With the family restroom, yeah, I'm sure that we've mentioned that before, and I'm sure that's part of the conversation, because even having a wider door and access doesn't help if you can't yank the door open.
I
Yeah.
think the new ADA rule requires that you gotta have automatics.
Yeah.
That's something that answer a question for the plans and everything. When those are all reviewed, all that critical items are looked at. They'll bring that up, because that's part of it. It's watched really close.
And that's why we say there's a lot of costs we just don't even know are waiting for us. And that's why the board has said these 2 areas really need to happen. We might like to do the worship center, but these need to happen. So let's see what we can do there, and then figure out what we can do with whatever's left. And so that's why there's a lot of unknown costs, and that's why the leadership team just has not. I mean, we don't even have conversations about the worship center. We started talking, we just said we can't even really go down this road yet. So we don't have anything other than we know kind of the main areas, seating, stage, sound and lights, what we call AVL, audio visual lights, where the sound booths are. I mean, there's some major areas we know, but that's it. I mean, we're just not even going down that road yet, because the board said that has to happen. Yeah.
I'm a little confused. The white hollow doors, the
Mm-hmm.
double doors there,
Uh-huh.
are you talking about eliminating one door, making it a
No,
single
no.
door?
No, I'm sorry. This is the upward hallway doors. We're not doing anything with
Okay.
wide hollow doors.
Well, you said 2 sets of double
Yeah.
doors, and I'm trying to think what they are.
Yeah,
Right.
they're right here. There's
Around the corner, down the
Yeah.
you've gone through them and probably haven't even paid attention. But there are 2 sets of double doors, fire doors, going into the upward hallway. So
Yeah.
there's 4 doors,
Yeah, yeah.
and we only need 2.
Right.
That's what I was referring to, not the wide hollow. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So far, so good? You know, our commitment has been to be transparent with you through this whole process. So it's exactly what we're doing. Realizing that we, like I said, can't have a 350, 400 person committee. So we want to keep you updated, but you know, we didn't want to get you involved in all the details. So let me explain, and I can come back to that if you need me to. Let me explain what happens next and your part of it. So in the Church of the Nazarene, we can't build or borrow without a vote of the members, approval of the members. Well, as we did that research, we discovered, first of all, it's not if you're renovating, it's if you're building a new building. So if you're borrowing money or building a new, expanding your footprint significantly, that's when the membership needs to vote. So technically, we don't have to vote on this. But in our commitment to be transparent with you, we're doing it anyway. Because we want to make sure you know what you're involved in and what your leadership team, renovation team is doing. So in the meantime, normally the way it works is the church, the local church, makes a proposal to the district, and the district building committee reviews that proposal and works with the church. Are you overextending yourself? Are you going to be able to, is this realistic? All of those kinds of things. And then they give approval before the congregation can even vote. Okay? That's the normal process. Well, I went to our district superintendent in the fall and said, tell me what we need to do and what you need from us, because we're going to get to the place where our folks want to be able to have a voice in this. So what do you need from us just to be above board and make sure, you know, that we've got the necessary approval? And our district superintendent, Dave Mowry, said, hang on, let me call the chairman of our district building committee, Dale Schaefer, and talk to him, and I'll get back to you. Called me back about 2 hours later and said, Mike, we have such confidence and trust in West Valley Church. You've already got approval. We don't need to see a plan. We don't need to see anything. We trust you guys. So go ahead. Well, that was great news. And so here we are. What we're asking you to approve at this stage, and what you'll see a ballot for, thought I had one somewhere, but you'll see it out there. I don't know where I put it. Anyway, all it says is, here are the priorities the leadership team has set. To renovate the restrooms and include a family restroom, to consolidate the children's area, and to do those two as efficiently and as inexpensively as possible, to leave as much funds as possible to begin focusing on the worship center without going into debt. That's the ballot. So Tom rightly said, we're not going to move forward until the congregation says, yeah, let's move forward. So technically, do we have to? No, but it's the right thing to do because we're in this together.
I got another question.
Yeah.
Don't mean to be a flying one.
No, you're not.
The process that we're going through has been described to us. To a lot of people, it would be that we're putting the cart before the horse. Because a lot of times projects like this, architect draws up pictures and everything, understand the process, goes out to a bid room, and you get bids from all over. we're wanting to understand you want to keep local people. What are the percentages in cost? Has anybody done the research of this process versus bid room, what total costs are? The variances in those? Am I communicating what
Yes.
the question is?
I don't think there's been any actual research, but in today's world, basically what you're talking about is the design, bid, build process. There's also the design, build process where you don't have an architect and a contractor, you have one party and the owner. But the in between is the build team process, which is becoming more and more popular day by day in the building world, and that's the process we're talking about. Is that the architect designs and we approve the basic design and concept, and then the architect becomes part of the design team, and that's really pretty popular today, and that's why it was the architect that recommended it, and that's why we chose this process. But you're right, the other process has been around for umpteen decades, and that's what many of us are very familiar with. I'm also fairly familiar with the design build process, which is the other end of the spectrum. The contractor is involved right before you even start conceptual drawings.
Sounds like the change orders come from the architect. Sounds like the change orders, the normal, the process for Eisenhower School, that the change orders happen at the architectural level rather than the actual building.
I don't know exactly how that's going to work. But I know that will be, see, it eliminates the finger pointing between the architect and the general contractor because they were involved in the final design, the construction drawings. They were involved in that together. And so they can't point fingers at each other because they are them.
And it doesn't happen in the dark because we've got our person in
Right.
that conversation all the time too.
Well, one of the things that Bart, our architect, says, when you're consulting builders, make sure that they have a collaborative attitude. In other words, yeah, is there going to be things come up? I mean, I've done enough remodel in my own house to know that there's always something that comes up, and there's always something that goes wrong. But you got to work through it, and so that was one of his strong recommendations: is make sure you've got somebody that just isn't okay, here's our building, point A and point B, and we're done. You got to work through the process, and they're willing to work through that process.
Yeah. And the builders that I've talked to, I haven't talked to all 6, but the ones that I talked to are really excited and emphasize the fact that is the more modern way to do things, and they're really excited about being involved at this level.
And I think John has talked to some, Stephen has talked to some, so all of the 6 do understand that's the process and are in agreement with that. Yeah.
So the vote is then going to be, does the body vote on the 2 items or the 3 items?
Yeah. So,
And then we're voting on the concept, not any layout or detail.
yeah, correct. We're voting on the priorities. Yeah. And I can read it to you really quick. The leadership team of West Valley Church has set these priorities for the current scope of the renovation project. 1, main foyer restrooms, update and bring into ADA compliance with the addition of a family restroom. 2, consolidation of the children's area, bringing nurseries into the same area, creating more safety and a unified check-in area. 3, these will be done as efficiently and inexpensively as possible in order to leave as much funds as possible in order to do as much as possible in the worship center. 4, all these will be done within the financial means that we can raise. We will not incur any debt. Do you approve of these priorities and plan? That's it. So, yeah, and that doesn't mean once we vote, see you later. We'll continue to do updates as we have more detailed information, and especially before we start anything, and especially before we do anything in the worship center, we'll talk to you about all that too. Yeah.
I just have one comment. I know you're not asking for amendments or
It's okay.
anything, but doing things as cheaply as possible, that seems like a value statement that worries me a little bit, because you're not going to control material costs. You're not going to really control labor costs, and what you're controlling is like finishes, some of the finished materials.
Yes.
And I'm worried that that's where you cut costs, and it turns out real cheap.
Yeah.
Because then you're just going to end up in more maintenance costs later.
Yes, understood. And the leadership team's fully committed to making sure, the big expense is aesthetics, right? So we want to make sure we've talked about, for instance, what will be the wall covering in the restrooms behind the urinals and the stalls. Will it be like a laminate or Formica thing, or will it be, you've seen that stuff in gas station bathrooms, that sort of textured thing? And the board has said this has to be as nice as possible, but we're not going to expend extra dollars for, flickering lanterns and hand wave and flush your toilet kind of thing. Yeah, that's the intent. When they say inexpensively, they are committed to quality, but not overindulgence in appearance. So
Cheap product, overall cost. We're going to use a quality product with the least amount of expense for a quality product.
yeah,
Right.
that's the idea. Yeah, you're not giving them a blank check to throw a couple of porta-johns in the foyer and call it good. They just it's their way of telling you they're not going to be frivolous in this process. They want it to be as good and quality as possible, but they're not going to be frivolous.
It's here for good, so.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well,
Function first, form second. Yeah.
and another part of that is what can we do ourselves in terms of decor and such, so that when you walk, part of the idea is when you come in the wide hollow entrance, maybe even the main entrance, you will immediately know that the children's area is that way. But some of that is just what you put on the walls and how you paint it and whatnot, that doesn't necessarily have to involve the contractor. Another point I want to reiterate, Mike said it, but I want to emphasize it. When we're talking about ministry areas, such as the children's consolidation and the worship center, the staff pastors and volunteer staff are very involved in getting their input. Probably not so much in the restrooms. That's where the architect knows the laws and the rules. But Pastor Casey was very involved in this design, and Pastor Roger has already been involved, and he and his team will be deeply involved. Because in the worship center, it's much more complicated in that you might do this, but oops, that impacts this. There's way more interconnectedness in the worship center than there was in the restrooms or the children's consolidation.
Lots of work has been done already in regard to that, just making sure on the leadership team's part, when we are able to look at the worship center, is the infrastructure going to have to be significantly changed? And so they're already doing their homework on that and preparing for that, because part of their decision making is here for good dollars need to go to renovation. Anything that we would, if we didn't do anything and we were going to have to fix it, that's probably a more facility budget and not here for good, because we want to maximize what you gave to go where you want it to go. So those conversations already happen at the leadership team level too, trying to decipher what's CapEx spending, deferred maintenance spending, and what's renovation dollars. And then making sure that infrastructure is at the point where it needs to be, so that we can do what needs to be done in the worship center. So I'm going to slip out. Tom has committed to being available to you after the service too, in the foyer if you have questions. But I'm going to take off. And by the way, we do have an update for you in the service on Here for Good and where that's at, because we're in the home stretch.